Chapter 248, Jian Wushuang showed up. Chapter 248, Jian Wushuang showed up. A man in coarse clothes was brought to the drill ground under the watchful gazes of many experts. His hair was grey and his face had a mustache on it, showing that he had experienced many vicissitudes of life. People couldn't feel any spiritual power from him. When he was brought to the center of the drill ground, he raised his head slowly. Deep in his eyes, there was a boundless void. His eyes calmly swept from Qi Luosheng to left and right messengers and then to those experts present at the scene. After a glance, he lounged in everybody's presence and took out a pot of wine, drinking alone. Many surrounding experts felt perturbed by his behavior. He is Jian Nantian, Jian Wushuang's father. He is Jian Nantian. Quite ordinary. Almost all of those present had heard of Jian Nantian 1 month ago, thus they were curious about him. After they saw him, however, most of them secretly despised him and thought that he was quite meager. They didn't see anything special in him. If they didn't know his identity before, perhaps all of them would think he was just an ordinary man or even a beggar. I heard Jian Nantian's name 1 month ago and knew that he would be executed in this gathering. I had never expected he was such a man. That's Jian Wushuang's father? Too ordinary. Even we couldn't tell apart him from a beggar on the street. Many people said that. Of course, there were some people, most of whom were knowledgeable experts, that narrowed their eyes when they saw Jian Nantian. This man is not simple. Being stared at by so many people, even he will be killed by Bloodfeather Tower, yet nothing can be seen in his eyes but calmness. Indifferent, he is so indifferent. It seems that the whole world is nothing to him. Experts from all of the sects, or people from Bloodfeather Tower, they are all the same in his eyes. Indifferent, but in other words, he is aloof. Aloof. Upon hearing this word, the people became restless. They asked themselves if they were him, what would they do? All of them could not drink alone whilst indifferently ignoring all of the people present. Who could do that? This only suggested that Jian Nantian was not simple. Young master, is that man your brother's father? Above the void, the grey-robed elder narrowed his eyes. What's wrong? Wang Yuan looked over at him questioningly. Nothing, I just feel that his state of mind is extraordinary. Having lived for 200 years, I couldn't catch him in a state of mind. It's a pity that his Dantian was destroyed, otherwise, he has the hope of reaching divine transcendence in the future, the grey-robed elder said seriously. Oh! Wang Yuan was surprised and he narrowed his eyes slightly. His father was locked with the spirit locking spell by Bloodfeather Tower before. Now, they bring him to the drill ground without the soul-seizing formation, so clearly they are afraid that the third brother will not come. On the high platform of the drill ground on Heartless Island, the bloody and wicked figure of Qi Luosheng glanced at Jian Nantian. Then his cold voice sounded on the drill ground. Gentlemen, you might not be familiar with this man. Let me introduce him to you. His name is Jian Nantian, who was famous in the Tianzong dynasty years ago. However, he was caught by Bloodfeather Tower, which took us a lot of effort, Qi Luosheng said with a cold smile. Besides, he's the father of someone that has made a big disturbance in the Tianzong dynasty. His son is Jian Wushuang, who is known as the first genius of Tianzong dynasty. Many experts on the drill ground were listening carefully. The Tianzong dynasty has not been tranquil in recent years, especially the Bloodfeather Tower. We have been provoked many times, and someone even slaughtered the strongholds of Bloodfeather Tower and killed experts there. I suppose that you do not need me to tell you who he is, Qi Luosheng said. Many experts on the drill ground were contemptuous of his words. They knew that it was Bloodfeather Tower who frequently attempted to assassinate Jian Wushuang. Therefore Jian Wushuang retaliated against them furiously. However, what Qi Luosheng said implied that it was Jian Wushuang who provoked Bloodfeather Tower first. Qi Luosheng's cold eyes looked around, and he said in a deep voice, "Today I invite all of you coming to the Heartless Island to listen to my experience and comprehension. More importantly, it is to warn those sects who are ready to make trouble or benefit from the trouble. Bloodfeather Tower is still number 1. Being the overlord in the Tianzong dynasty, Bloodfeather Tower won't allow anybody to provoke us. Anyone that provokes Bloodfeather Tower will die." After saying that, a terrifying pressure emitted out from Qi Luosheng. The force covered the entirety of the drill ground. Many experts who were standing there suddenly looked solemn. Some of the weaker ones were even more horrified. However, as soon as Qi Luosheng finished speaking, suddenly, a loud and clear shout rose seemingly from the sky. "Anyone that provokes Bloodfeather Tower will die." "I don't think so." At the very moment of this voice rising, rumble. A stream of terrible killing intent rose from somewhere far away. Under the sweeping of slaughter origin, the horrible killing intent flew to the ninth heaven. Immediately, the whole heaven and earth turned silent. He's arrived. Has he really come? With a sword in hand, he is invincible. Jian Wushuang. The entire drill ground was in an uproar, and everybody's eyes turned to the source of the killing intent at that moment. It came from outside of Heartless Island, which was quite a distance away from it. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Lots of experts of Yin-Yang Void Realm flew up high and stood in the void to look at that direction. It comes from the back of the mountain. So far, those Yin-Yang Void Realm experts all felt extremely shocked. Heartless Island was surrounded by a lake and the lake was surrounded by mountains. The strong killing intent came from the back of a mountain, which was far away from Heartless Island. Even though it came from such a far place, it was shocking. Everybody looked at the direction where the killing intent came from, but what they saw was just the mountains in front of them. At this moment, bang! At the end of the horizon, a huge sword shadow suddenly appeared. Though it was far away from them, they felt shocked. Then the sword shadow split directly towards the mountain. What is he doing? All of them were perplexed. But the next moment, they saw that huge sword shadow splitting the mountain. Rumble. The mountain shook crazily. The next moment, it was cut in two. The mountain was split in half and a 10-meter wide road appeared. At the end of the split tunnel, a figure with a long sword on his back loomed over them. He was Jian Wushuang. With a sword in hand, he was second to none. Chapter 249, Making a Path by Splitting the Mountains and Lakes. Chapter 249, Making a Path by Splitting the Mountains and Lakes. Everybody watched in shock. It was unbelievable that a lofty mountain was split in half by a single sword stroke. Then, numerous people looked towards the far end of the path that was just created, where a figure with a long sword on the back suddenly appeared. Jian Wushuang. With a sword in hand, no one is his match. He is the most peerless genius in the history of our Tianzong dynasty. The entire Heartless Island began to see the all at once. Although some of the participants in the meeting were young warriors, not just mentioning the young warriors, even experts who reached Yin Void or higher were excited. The young warriors were brought here by their elders to gain experience. Seeing Jian Wushuang, they were extremely excited. After all, Jian Wushuang was a real myth to them. Numerous young warriors were full of blind fanaticism and worship for Jian Wushuang. Thinking about it, who else could lead a small dynasty, like the Tianzong dynasty, to defeat all the other northwest dynasties in the easternmost hunt? Who else could achieve the peak of the Yin Void realm before the age of 20? Except, now he had already reached the Yang Void realm. Who else could force Bloodfeather Tower, an overlord in the Tianzong dynasty, to set up such an unbelievable trap? No one. He was truly the strongest in the history of the Tianzong dynasty. Jian Wushuang. In the corner of the drill ground, there was a handsome man who was holding his hands tightly. He was extremely excited, and his eyes were full of fanaticism. However, seeing the handsome man in such a state, Jian Meng'er, who was standing beside him, felt even worse. The gladiator arena gathered a great number of experts, with Bai Chong among them. He looked out towards Jian Wushuang, with his hand touching the left sleeve that was missing an arm. He smiled and muttered, it was worth supporting the birth of such a peerless genius, even at the cost of an arm. Jian Xinhong stood in the field where the solitary experts gathered. He was already looking at Jian Wushuang as well, with an extremely mixed expression that was excited, pleasantly surprised, and satisfied, but most of all, worried. Be sure to survive this fight no matter what. Jian Xinhong snarled deep in his heart. Third bro. Wang Yuan and Su Ru were hiding somewhere in the surroundings of Heartless Island. After seeing Jian Wushuang, their eyes began to glisten. Jian Wushuang stole all the spotlight. Everybody present had fixed their eyes on Jian Wushuang, who had appeared at the far end of this path. Jian Wushuang slightly lifted his head as a surging killing intent began to rush out and fill the area. He looked around and took in everything that was happening on Heartless Island. Then, he began moving forward. Dung. As soon as he stepped forward and placed his foot on the ground, an intangible wave instantly rippled out. At the same time, a light sound was heard. However, that sound quickly became louder and louder. Dung, 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 dung. Jian Wushuang walked forward, one step after another, at a fairly slow pace. Every time he took a step, his killing intent grew a little stronger. Jian Wushuang attracted the attention of all the people on Heartless Island. Soon, he passed through the path and made his way to the lakeside. But he didn't stop there. Instead, he directly stepped on the lake without any hesitation. The instant his foot touched the surface, a rumbling sound was heard and the whole lake instantly became turbulent. It looked like the water was being crazily engulfed by its surroundings. Within a minute, only a huge ravine, with no visible bottom, remained where the lake was previously. It was as if the whole lake had been cut away. The ravine was several dozen meters wide, and even though water was surging into the ravine from the lake, it was obvious that this ravine would not be filled in a short amount of time. Seeing this, the experts on Heartless Island couldn't help squinting. At this moment, everybody was reminded of a saying. The mountains will split asunder, the rivers will run dry, and the skies will be stained with blood as swords point towards the demon horde. Among them, the first two already occurred, so the next step should be staining the sky with blood. Jian Wushuang didn't stop after he cut through the lake. He continued walking slowly towards Heartless Island. At this exact moment, dozens of figures violently glided close from the nearby area. Haha, third bro, I am here to help you. Bubbling laughter reverberated throughout the area as a heavily built fat guy appeared at Jian Wushuang's side, followed by more than 20 purple-robed figures that landed behind the fat man in succession. All of them radiated a monstrous aura. Among the purple-robed figures, more than 10 were experts in the Yang Void Realm, while the rest were at the peak of the Yin Void Realm. In the Tianzong dynasty, this battle formation could only be called horrifying. Are they from the alchemy school? Qi Luosheng was standing on a raised platform on the Heartless Island. After watching Wang Yuan and his comrades appear, he slightly squinted his eyes, then he smirked and said, "The alchemy school and Holy Emperor Palace restrain each other, so it's impossible for them to bring in their top experts. They are just some ordinary experts in the Yin-Yang Void Realm. What can they do?" However, as soon as Qi Luosheng uttered these words, 10 more figures glided close and landed behind Jian Wushuang. Third bro, Suru lightly said to Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang nodded slightly. Ice Nether Valley? Seeing this, Qi Luosheng felt a little bit shocked, but it was still not enough to make him feel fear. Jian Wushuang, we are here to support you. A deep roar suddenly reverberated throughout the area, followed by 6 people gliding close to Jian Wushuang. It was a group led by a white-robed lady. After she appeared, the entire Heartless Island began seething. Palace Master White. Palace Master White from Dragon Palace? Palace Master White came in person. Does Dragon Palace intend to get involved? The people present were all top experts from various sects, so one glance was enough for them to recognize Palace Master White. Bai Ling. Qi Luosheng's face instantly darkened and he asked, "Does Dragon Palace want to join this fight?" Haha. Palace Master Black, who had arrived a long time ago, responded to Qi Luosheng with a light smile. Tower Master Qi, you misunderstood. Bai Ling and the 4 previous temple masters of Dragon Palace announced their resignation yesterday. Now they are just Golden Dragon ambassadors of Golden Dragon Palace. They have little relationship with our Dragon Palace. Oh! Qi Luosheng frowned. At this point, many experts had an odd look on their faces. Palace Master White resigned from Dragon Palace? Unbelievable. It seems like everyone is here. The young master of the alchemy school, people from Ice Nether Valley, and Bai Ling from Dragon Palace. Whatever, you guys saved me the time of looking for you later, Qi Luosheng said with a cold look in his eyes. By now, Palace Master White and her comrades had already moved behind Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang. Palace Master White gave Jian Wushuang a deep glance. She was followed by the 4 previous temple masters from Dragon Palace and Jian Wushuang's good friend, Yi Rufeng. Jian Wushuang had not said a word since he appeared. He just stared at the heartless island in front of him and kept walking ahead without a pause on his steps. At the same time, the killing intent continued to surge out of his body, growing stronger and stronger. Jian Wushuang passed through the lake and stepped onto Heartless Island, slowly walking towards the drill ground center. Finally, he appeared in front of Qi Luosheng and the experts of Bloodfeather Tower. At this point, Jian Wushuang stopped walking, then lifted his head and slowly scanned the crowd with a cold look in his eyes. When I was chased by Bloodfeather Tower and forced to jump into the abyss 3 years ago, I said, "The day I return is the day all you demons die. And today is the day Bloodfeather Tower is destroyed." Chapter 250, The Fierce Battle Begins. Chapter 250, The Fierce Battle Begins. His cold words reverberated throughout the sky over the Heartless Island, catching the experts on the Heartless Island by surprise. Today was the day Bloodfeather Tower would be destroyed. With such a small group. How dare you say that? It's ridiculous. Qi Luosheng sneered, followed by several whoosh sounds. A large number of figures suddenly glided close and then landed near the center of the island. These figures all wore a black robe and a purple mask. It was a group headed by the left and right messengers from Bloodfeather Tower. At a glance, the number was roughly 100. So many people. They are all purple-masked assassins. They are all experts in the yin-yang void realm. Is this the true strength of Bloodfeather Tower? Seeing such a battle formation, the experts from the various sects were all shocked. Anyone in the yin-yang void realm could definitely be considered a top expert in the Qianzong dynasty. Some top sects of the Qianzong dynasty only had a few of these experts at most. However, at the very beginning of this battle, Bloodfeather Tower already dispatched about 100. Even though most of these purple-masked assassins were only at the yin void realm, the number of yang void realm experts was still more than 10. It was a fierce and magnificent battle formation. Wang Yuan glanced at Jian Wushuang and then said, with a serious tone, "We can handle these people." "Okay." Jian Wushuang nodded slightly. "None of you guys will leave here today," Qi Luosheng said coldly. He slightly lifted his palm and immediately signaled for the battle to begin. The instant he lowered his hand, the purple-masked assassins immediately took action. "Go." As soon as Wang Yuan snarled, all the experts from the Alchemy School, Ice Nether Valley, and Dragon Palace violently rushed forward as well. At this moment, Wang Yuan stepped forward as well. In only an instant, the two groups had already engaged themselves in battle on the Heartless Island. The battle began in an instant. Rumble. As soon as the experts collided, several horrible roars were instantly heard. Along with those sounds, violent spiritual power was crazily sweeping in every direction, leading Heartless Island toward its own destruction. "Run, run! Get out of here right away! Hurry, before you get caught up in it! Hurry, leave Heartless Island!" At this moment, the experts from the various sects were rushing to leave the island one after another because none of them wanted to be involved in the battle. They halted once they made it to the island's exterior, but their eyes were still fixated on the battlefield. In terms of quantity, Bloodfeather Tower had more experts than Jian Wushuang. But in terms of the strength, Jian Wushuang's side was much stronger. Among the experts of the Alchemy School and Ice Nether Valley, more than 15 were at the Yang Void Realm. The remaining were all at the peak of the Yin Void Realm. As for Dragon Palace, although there were only 6 experts, 3 were in the Yang Void Realm, including Palace Master White, while the rest were at the peak of the Yin Void Realm. In other words, among the experts on Jian Wushuang's side, the weakest ones were at the peak of the Yin Void Realm. However, on the Bloodfeather Tower's side, even though they had a great number of experts, most were somewhere between the initial Yin Void Realm and the profound Yin Void Realm. Their number of experts who achieved the peak of the Yin Void Realm or the Yang Void Realm was less than Jian Wushuang's side. Because of this, the overall strength of both sides was very close, so it was extremely fierce as soon as the battle began. The experts on both sides were furiously fighting, and it was hard to tell which side had the upper hand. Even though the battle was off to a violent start, Jian Wushuang had not moved a single step. Not just him, Qi Luosheng had not moved either. He was just standing there on the raised platform. Jian Wushuang glanced at the battlefield in the front of him, then turned and looked toward his father, Jian Nantian. Currently, Jian Nantian was lying on the ground and drinking wine alone. His eyelids didn't even flicker until he noticed Jian Wushuang looking at him. Then he gave Jian Wushuang a glance as well. They looked at each other, without needing to say any words. A second later, Jian Wushuang finally began to move. He took one step after another, walking directly towards Jian Nantian. However, when he was about to take his third step, he was stopped by a whizzing sound and 3 figures suddenly appeared in front of him. Huh! After looking at the 3 figures that suddenly appeared, Jian Wushuang halted and the expression on his face darkened. The 3 were not assassins from Blood Feather Tower, but he knew one of them. Mo Lingtian. Jian Wushuang coldly stared at the vicious-eyed man, who was carrying a long sword on his back and seemed to be the leader. The law enforcement elder of the Wilderness Sword Sect, Mo Lingtian. Jian Wushuang previously met Mo Lingtian during the Easternmost hunt. At that time, Mo Lingtian lent his hand to Blood Feather Tower against him. Without Wang Yuan's support at that time, Jian Wushuang wouldn't have survived Mo Lingtian's attack. Jian Wushuang. Mo Lingtian had a slight sneer on his face as he blocked Jian Wushuang's path. There were 2 people following behind him, one was a man and the other was a lady. Both of them carried a sharp sword on their back. Furthermore, their aura was no weaker than Mo Lingtian's. The peak of the Young Void Realm. Needless to say, the 2 behind Mo Lingtian were experts at the peak of the Young Void Realm. So the 3 in front of Jian Wushuang were all at the peak of the Young Void Realm. Wilderness Sword Sect. They are from the Wilderness Sword Sect. The Wilderness Sword Sect is one of the top 8 sects in the Nanyang continent. Why are they entangling themselves in Blood Feather Tower's matters? It is already very difficult to deal with Blood Feather Tower. Now, unexpectedly, the Wilderness Sword Sect has joined in as well. The experts who were watching the battle from outside of the Heartless Island already recognized Mo Lingtian and his comrades. Everybody started to feel sad for Jian Wushuang. No matter what, the Wilderness Sword Sect was one of the top 8 sects in the Nanyang continent. Jian Wushuang, we meet again, Mo Lingtian said while staring at Jian Wushuang coldly. Yes, Jian Wushuang slightly nodded and said, I said it during the Easternmost hunt, there will be ample time for us to meet again. But I didn't expect it to happen so quickly. However, since you are already here, let's put an end to our animosities today. It's time to finish it. But it will be me who finishes you, Mo Lingtian said. In no time his eyes turned cold. Sure. Suddenly, the space in front of Jian Wushuang was cut, after which Mo Lingtian appeared, holding a sharp longsword in his hand. At this moment, his long sword was already slashing out at an amazing speed, like a bolt of lightning. However, Jian Wushuang just stood there as if nothing had happened, not making a single move. Go to hell! Mo Lingtian yelled and grinned, his eyes turning even icier. The long sword directly passed through Jian Wushuang's neck, but there wasn't a single drop of blood. Huh! Mo Lingtian was stunned because he had perceived that his sword did not touch anything. It was a residual shadow. The object that this long sword just passed through was not Jian Wushuang, just his residual shadow. You want to kill me? An extremely cold voice suddenly came from Mo Lingtian's side. What? Mo Lingtian was shocked and looked to the side, where a figure who he didn't expect to see had appeared. What's more, a tremendous killing intent was radiating from this figure and focusing on him. Do you think trash like you can kill me? No sooner had Jian Wushuang spoke, than he threw out a slap. The palm, filled with slaughter origin, directly moved towards Mo Lingtian's face. Chapter 251, The Starlight Sword Array. Chapter 251, The Starlight Sword Array. Too fast. Jian Wushuang moved so fast that it took some time for people to notice that he appeared beside Mo Lingtian. Mo Lingtian, however, did notice, but before he reacted, Jian Wushuang's palm already landed on his face. Puff! With a single move from Jian Wushuang, Mo Lingtian spat a mouthful of blood. He shot back like a shell and violently crashed into the drill ground, which made the area shake so much that cracks appeared. Senior brother Lingtian. Seeing this, the man and the lady that Mo Lingtian brought were shocked to the core. Mo Lingtian struggled to stand up slowly with a disreputable state. His chest was swollen like a bun, blood could be dimly seen in the corner of his mouth, and his whole body was shaking uncontrollably. By then, his eyes were started turning icy. It's just 7 months since we met last time, how could he have increased his strength like this? Mo Lingtian was astounded by Jian Wushuang. Then he looked at the man and the lady next to him and said seriously, "This fellow is a little bit odd, let's display the Starlight Sword Array together and then kill him." Starlight Sword Array? The man and the lady were shocked. The Wilderness Sword Sect was well known for the sword principle. The sect not only owned a large number of transcendent swordsmanship and sword skills, but also owned some sword formations. The sword formations were extraordinary and gained a good fame in the entire Nanyang continent. Normally these sword formations were used to against the powerful enemies. However, Jian Wushuang was just at the initial completion of Yang Void Realm. Was it necessary for 3 experts of the peak of Yang Void Realm to activate the sword formation by joining hands? Don't underestimate him. Hurry up, Mo Lingtian said without stopping. The man and the lady nodded heavily, and moved into action without hesitation. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The 3 figures instantly stood together side by side, followed by the burst of 3 sword essences. In no time the sword essences directly beamed into the sky. Huh! Jian Wushuang held his head up, and looked at the 3 with astonishment. Show him what we are capable of. As soon as Mo Lingtian threw a deep roar, the 3 figures violently glided up at once, and in no time appeared in front of Jian Wushuang. A second later, the 3 slashed their swords simultaneously. Hua! 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 3 streaks of sword light lashed out. Each one was extremely dazzling and held incredible power. The moment the sword light rushed forward, the 3 streaks of sword light merged into one as if they were launched by a single person. The integrated sword light got more and more dazzling, as it was flying towards Jian Wushuang in a much fiercer state. Jian Wushuang was holding an ordinary cyan-colored long sword in his hand. Seeing the sword light getting closer, he moved his wrist and fiercely slashed his long sword out. The 4th move of selfless sword technique. He activated the origin of the world. Thud. The 2 sword lights collided together, leaving an almighty bang behind. Huh! Jian Wushuang was a little bit shocked. He could tell there was a force bypassing his attack and coming in close contact with him. However, he couldn't help taking a few steps backwards. After retreating for dozens of meters, Jian Wushuang regained his balance, held up his head and set his eyes upon Mo Lingtian and his companions at the front. Sword formation? There was a surprised look in Jian Wushuang's eyes. Kill him. Mo Lingtian's eyes were icy. With a snarl, the 3 displayed their movements simultaneously again. Interesting. Jian Wushuang sneered. He immediately moved up to them. Boom. The horrible sword essence broke out again. Due to the strength of the sword formation, Mo Lingtian and his 2 comrades seemed to have integrated into one person. They grabbed the sword simultaneously, and by then, both the swordsmanship power and the sword speed got greatly increased. The 3 were all at the peak of Yang Void Realm, which already afforded them an upper hand. Now joint fight made their battle strength reach an even higher level. However, at this moment, Jian Wushuang activated World Origin and Slaughter Origin simultaneously and engaged himself in the fierce fight. In a short time, it was hard to tell who had the upper hand over the other. Is the sword formation that powerful? Jian Wushuang pondered in surprise. If Mo Lingtian and his 2 comrades fought with Jian Wushuang individually, all of them would be easily killed by Jian Wushuang. Even if the 3 allied but did not display the sword formation, Jian Wushuang could handle them calmly and kill them one by one. But now they were displaying the sword formation and seemed like a single person. This greatly enhanced their overall strength. Even though Jian Wushuang already activated the World Origin and Slaughter Origin, he still did not have an upper hand. Jian Wushuang was surprised, while Mo Lingtian and his comrades were shocked. We already displayed the Starlight Sword Array by allying together. How is it possible we still can't kill him? He is just at the initial young void realm. Why is his strength comparable to us three? Origin, he comprehended the origin, and he comprehended more than one. What's more, his strength is stronger than the ordinary initial young void realm. I am afraid his strength is as good as the exceptional young void realm right now. How is that possible that there is such a powerful expert of the initial young void realm in this world? Mo Lingtian and his comrades all felt it was inconceivable. After all, they had already used the Starlight Sword Array. They could even defeat Dan Yi, an expert at the peak of the young void realm who comprehended the origin. However, they couldn't defeat Jian Wushuang, who was merely at the initial young void realm. Your sword formation is indeed excellent, Jian Wushuang suddenly said. Mo Lingtian and his comrades looked toward Jian Wushuang at once. But it's over. Jian Wushuang's eyes were icy. He moved his wrist and got his cyan long sword inserted into the interspatial ring. A second later, he slowly pulled out the triple kill sword that he carried in the back. No sooner had he drew the triple kill sword out from its sheath, a scary killing intent spread out. Mo Lingtian and his comrades darkened their faces. Mph, he changed a sword, so what? Mo Lingtian sneered. Don't waste time on him, just use the unique skill. Let's do it. With a monstrous breath, the three figures fiercely glided out again. Go to hell! Mo Lingtian shouted. At that moment, the three all displayed their own unique skill. Instantly, three towering sword shadows could be seen bursting out almost at the same time. The unique skills they displayed were different, but the power activated by these skills were all earth-shaking. The moment the power was activated, the experts standing outside the Heartless Island immediately looked toward them. Even the experts who were fiercely fighting in the Heartless Island right now also threw their eyes over one after another. A second later, the three sword lights, each having immeasurable power, were instantly combined into one. All of a sudden, the sword light became twinkling and dazzling, as if it was a ray of starlight in the dark void. Rumble. The cold sword light pierced through the air, and was tearing everything in heaven and earth. Soon after, it appeared in front of Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang looked cold. Feeling the chill heavy wind, he instantly slashed his triple kill sword out. Buzzing. The towering sword essence was just activated. Then Jian Wushuang slowly waved the triple kill sword down. He was displaying the fifth move of the selfless sword technique. The fifth move was called blood-rupturing movement. Unlike the previous four moves, the blood-rupturing movement mostly relied on strength. The majestic sword shadow was immediately activated. This was a very slow slash, as if it didn't contain any strength. However, when it collided with the dazzling sword light that Mo Lingtian and his comrades displayed, boom! The horrible roar was heard, and it shook the area so much. A second later, the majestic sword shadow just overwhelmingly smashed the sword light to pieces. Then the sword shadow continued to move toward Mo Lingtian and his comrades. Chapter 252 displayed the movements. Chapter 252 displayed the movements. Boom! The majestic sword essence kept rolling, and made Mo Lingtian and his comrades violently retreat one after another. The Starlight Sword Array was immediately disintegrated. No sooner had the dignified lady, who was part of the three, regained her balance than a figure appeared beside her like a ghost. What? The dignified lady was stunned. She struggled to turn around and saw a cold sword light flash before her eyes. The light got closer and closer, and left the lady no time to resist it. Kai! The sword light ruthlessly passed over the dignified lady. She was killed by Jian Wushuang without having a second to emit a scream. Jian Wushuang didn't stop his advance. He bounded up again and appeared next to the black-haired middle-aged man. Seeing this, the black-haired middle-aged man suddenly shrunk his eyes. He saw how the dignified lady got killed by Jian Wushuang a while ago. The lady was no weaker in terms of strength. Buzzing. There came another beautiful and mournful sword light. The black-haired middle-aged man widened his eyes, and his face was filled with a hint of frenzy. At this point, he slashed his sword out in panic, hoping he could stop the sword light. However, the result was not in his favor. The sword light mercilessly streaked from the black-haired middle-aged man, and his long sword was directly sheared off in the middle. Without a pause, the sword light continued cutting across the man's throat. How could it be possible? The black-haired middle-aged man felt it was unbelievable even at the last minute before he died. How could his blade just be cut into 2 pieces by Jian Wushuang's sword? Having killed 2 peak of the young Void Realm experts in succession, Jian Wushuang now focused his eyes upon Mo Lingtian. By then, Mo Lingtian was already freaking out. Junior brother Luo and junior sister Yu. Mo Lingtian looked extremely frightened. Only 7 months have passed. How could have this fellow enhance his strength like this in such a short time? Mo Lingtian felt it was incredible. When he noticed Jian Wushuang's eyes upon him, he instantly could feel that he skipped a beat. Run. At this point, Mo Lingtian just turned around and ran away without any hesitation. He was running to where Qi Luosheng was. While running, he shouted, "Tower Master Qi, help me, help me." The wicked figure Qi Luosheng had been sitting on the raised platform on the drill ground. He coldly gave Mo Lingtian a glance and said scornfully, "What trash the people in the wilderness sword sect are. No wonder they are about to lose the position of one of the 8 top sects." He still stood up slowly. As soon as he stood up, an intense sense of power was instantly engulfing the area. Having felt the strong force, the experts who were fiercely fighting on the entire field of the Heartless Island couldn't help but stop and look in awe. Countless eyes were fixed upon Qi Luosheng. "You finally decided to get up." Jian Wushuang half closed his eyes and stared at Qi Luosheng. Qi Luosheng was the Tower Master of the Bloodfeather Tower. His rank was that of a divine transcendence. The fight had been going on for quite a long time. However, Qi Luosheng hadn't displayed any sign of interest. That is until now. Divine transcendence. He was finally about to take action. A top expert of divine transcendence, how powerful can he be? Outside the Heartless Island, a large number of experts from different sects were excitedly staring at Qi Luosheng. In the Tianzong dynasty, the divine transcendence could be called a legend. Everybody knew that such an expert had accumulated incredible strength and skills. However, no one knew the extent of his power. Most of the experts present, including the Yin-Yang Void Realm experts, had never seen a divine transcendence expert display a movement before. But finally, they would have the chance to see it. Divine transcendence. Jian Wushuang's eyes were glistening. By no time, there was a monstrous battle intent rising up. Feeling the battle intent, Qi Luosheng on the raised platform threw a sneer on his face. He then bounded up and appeared 10 meters away in front of Jian Wushuang. Qi Luosheng was just levitating on the void and overlooking Jian Wushuang. "You don't feel scared in front of me. Instead, your battle intent is so violent right now. You have a lot of guts. I don't. I just want to see how strong the divine transcendence top expert is." Jian Wushuang stretched out his tongue and licked his lips as if signifying his desire to experience true power. The battle intent was enormous. "Ha ha, do you think you are qualified to see my real strength?" Qi Luosheng sneered. Followed by the display of his 3 fingers, 3 finger points. "If you can survive from my 3 fingers, then you are qualified to see my real strength." There was a tinge of obvious condescension in Qi Luosheng's words. However, none of the experts present could ignore his arrogance, because he was divine transcendence. Divine transcendence and Yin-Yang Void Realm were completely 2 different concepts. How strong the expert in such level would be. 3 fingers. Jian Wushuang sneered. "Then I will wait and see. I won't let you down." Qi Luosheng lightly smiled. A second later, he lifted his fingers. "Watch it, this is the first finger." No sooner had Qi Luosheng uttered the words than he stretched out one of his right fingers. It was a simple and casual pointing. However, as soon as he pointed his finger out, a horrible breath pervaded in the air at once. The void in front of Jian Wushuang was suddenly cut through, followed by the appearance of a giant finger. The huge finger was composed of the vast spiritual power. It sent forth an odd and violent breath, as if it extended from the ancient time. The moment the giant finger appeared, the experts on the Heartless Island were all shocked, horrified and intrigued. The giant finger contained horrible power, and everybody felt frightened and trembling. At this moment, Jian Wushuang couldn't help but shrink his eyes. A second later, he fiercely slashed his triple kill sword out without hesitation. The fifth move of the selfless sword technique, blood-rupturing movement, world origin, was completely activated. The majestic sword shadow that Jian Wushuang used to cut through Mo Lingtian's sword formation before burst out again at once, and it instantly collided with the giant finger. By no time, the two violent forces were just extruding immense power together. Rumble. The void was shuddering, and the horrible power was splattering. However, suddenly, with a bang sound, the majestic sword shadow directly collapsed. Huh! Jian Wushuang was stunned. The giant finger continued pointing towards him, and he couldn't do anything except lifting his triple kill sword before his chest. A mighty bang was heard, and then Jian Wushuang's body was just destructively forced back. Jian Wushuang had been pushed back for a few hundred meters away, and he didn't keep stand on his feet until he was in the void over the edge of the Heartless Island. At this moment, his face was already pale. You warded off the first finger, good. But I just activated 30% of my strength on this finger. For the second one, I will activate 60% of my strength. The sword dazzled with incomparable brilliance. With one slash of the sword, it seemed as if it could cleave any living thing and the heavens themselves. However, despite the awesomeness of this mighty sword, when faced with the oncoming attack of the ancient giant finger as they collided, there was a terrible rumble. In merely a flash, this incomparable and brilliant sword was summarily defeated. Bang! As the gigantic blast came forward, Jian Wushuang once more withdrew himself. This time, as he fell back, he spat a mouthful of fresh blood out. Under the attack of the finger with 60% of strength, Jian Wushuang was already seriously injured. Still one finger left. Qi Luosheng's gaze was indifferent as he glanced at Jian Wushuang. With this final finger, I'll use 90% of my strength. You should take it well. As Qi Luosheng's words trailed off, his third finger immediately came out. Boom! The void atop Jian Wushuang suddenly had a large hole split in it. Then a giant finger stretched through that hole and moved toward Jian Wushuang. The power of the finger was much more frightening than the two that had come before. When this finger came forward, countless experts in the arena could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. Such a finger was able to kill more than 10 experts at the peak of Yang Void Realm in an instant. Watching this finger, Jian Wushuang was shocked. Merely 60% of strength had caused him to be injured, now 90%. The power of the finger was nearly more than he could bear. No matter what, I need to do my best. Jian Wushuang lifted up his head, and in a split second ferociously burst forward with killing intent. Slaughter origin enveloped his whole body, causing him to look like a peerless Shura that had come from hell. He lifted the triple kill sword once again. The moment he raised up the long sword, the sword soul in his sea of consciousness madly trembled. Then a giant spectral image appeared behind his back. This spectral image was more than 100 feet tall, like a giant. His body stood straight and tall, coming into view with an ice-cold stare devoid of any emotion, staring straight at the heavens. This gaze seemed full of disdain for everything in the entire world. He stood behind Jian Wushuang, as if he was an unmatched god of war. This giant raised a huge sword, and slashed downwards as Jian Wushuang did. Blood-emptying technique, the first move, all-smashing stroke. The unmatched sword. Sword of killing. There was an immediate explosion. When it comes to offensive power, Slaughter origin was stronger than world origin. This blood-emptying technique was also Jian Wushuang's strongest move at present. Giving all that he had, his Slaughter origin exploded with immense power. Even Qi Luosheng couldn't help but be stunned when he saw the stroke. However, he still sneered like before. Your swordsmanship is better than I thought. It's a shame that the difference in strength is so great. In the face of absolute power, it all means nothing. As his voice drifted off, the ancient giant finger that came from atop the void descended and slammed directly into the sword of killing. Boom! The heavens fell and the earth split asunder. A blast wave seemingly capable of destroying everything formed in the spot where the two of them collided with each other, madly spreading out. This blast wave swept out and reached many of the experts on the periphery. The yin void and even the yang void experts were shocked, and their bodies were involuntarily slammed back. "Go to hell," Qi Luosheng said softly with cold eyes. Snap. Jian Wushuang's expression immediately changed as the giant behind him dissipated. The giant finger had pulverized his swordsmanship, and afterwards the merciless attacks on his body continued downwards. Finally, it violently hit the ground of the Heartless Island. Boom! The entire Heartless Island swayed, which had never happened before. After everything had settled, everyone couldn't help but look at the direct center of the Heartless Island. There appeared a giant circular pit more than dozens of meters in diameter. It was so deep that you could not see the bottom. Jian Wushuang fell into the lowest part of that pit. No one knew whether he was alive or dead. How terrible. This is the strength of a divine transcendence expert. No, he still hasn't used all of his abilities, just then he only used 90%, but the results. For all of the countless experts inside and out of the Heartless Island, this moment shook them to their core. The divine transcendence expert was so powerful and unbelievable. He was strong enough to make people choke in desperation. Is Jian Wushuang dead? The experts of each side were shaken, and they all simultaneously one after the other stared towards the bottom of the pit. Everyone was curious about whether Jian Wushuang could survive such a terrible attack. Brother. Wang Yuan and Su Ru had a worried look. At the same time, Jian Nantian, who had been lying on the drill ground and casually drinking, narrowed his eyes as he looked towards the pit. Qi Luosheng stood above the pit and coldly looked downward. Such a little expert of the initial Yang Void realm could make me use 90% of my strength. Even though you're dead, you should be proud. Qi Luosheng laughed coldly, but suddenly his laughter was cut off. Chapter 254. Chapter 254. Devourment of Heaven and Earth, Soul-Devouring Secret Skill. Jian Wushuang was lying at the bottom of the giant pit. There were remnants of blood in his mouth. His face was deathly white. He felt a sharp pain throughout his entire body. The divine transcendence expert was quite powerful indeed. Fortunately, the heavenly creation skill has continuously remolded my body. It made all of the bones and muscles in my body much tougher and durable than the average warrior. Otherwise, the third finger would have finished me off, Jian Wushuang muttered. The power of the three fingers was earth-shattering. Under the attack of the three fingers, he was seriously injured. Can only rely on the final trump card, Jian Wushuang said with a twinkle of madness in his eyes. His most powerful trump card was Soul-Devouring Secret Skill. Soul-Devouring Secret Skill had saved his life from crises many times before. Now, the Soul-Devouring Secret Skill had become his final hope. Secret Skill, Soul-Devouring, Jian Wushuang shouted. Then within his body there exploded out a violent and terrible power. The first volume of the Soul-Devouring Secret Skill absorbed all natural power within a 100-meter radius, and was extremely potent. However, the second volume of the Soul-Devouring Secret Skill was even more frightening. As the Soul-Devouring Secret Skill was performed, there was a rumble and the heavens and earth changed color. Under the gaze of the countless experts inside and out of the Heartless Island, an unprecedented terrific power exploded out from the bottom of the pit. Devourment of Heaven and Earth. In an instant, a giant engulfing whirlpool formed at the bottom of the giant pit. At this moment, a vast amount of natural power coming from all things of the universe headed towards that engulfing whirlpool. What's this? What is that? A whirlpool? Such frightening power to engulf everything. The countless experts on the edges were shaken as they watched this giant whirlpool appear. Everyone felt as if their hearts were going to leap out from their chests. Even when Qi Luosheng saw a giant swallowing whirlpool appear at the bottom, his face fell. Using your final trump card, eh? He knew Jian Wushuang was the type to have an ace up his sleeve, and was able to make his power rise sharply in a short span of time. However, this kind of trump card was not Qi Luosheng's concern at all. Mph, you can only go up one level in regards to your own realm. Even if you can go from the initial Yang Void Realm to profound Yang Void Realm, then what? Qi Luosheng said with disdain. Jian Wushuang ever used this trump card before when he was in the easternmost hunting. He then elevated himself from the exceptional Gold Core Realm to initial Yin Void Realm, but he had only gone up one level. In Qi Luosheng's mind, by using this trump card Jian Wushuang could at best just go from the initial Yang Void Realm to profound Yang Void Realm. But he didn't know that Jian Wushuang just grasped the first volume of the soul-devouring secret skill when he was in the easternmost hunting. Now, he had grasped the second volume. Look around. Look at those trees, what's wrong? A voice cried in alarm. Everyone then saw that in the Heartless Island, a great number of flowers, plants, and trees all dried up one after the other. Just in an instant, all of them had been deprived of their life force. The ground of the Heartless Island was affected. The earth that had originally been full of vitality had become dry and yellow in an instant, to the point where cracks have started appearing as if a long drought befell the island. The Heartless Island that had previously been abundant with life had seemingly become a place of death in an instant. How big was the entire Heartless Island? No less than a considerable amount of miles. Could any skill really kill off an entire island of this size so quickly and efficiently? Everyone saw this act, and it was nearly enough to make their heads explode in a fit of terror. Once the entire Heartless Island's natural power had been swallowed up, the force of the giant swirling whirlpool at the bottom of the pit stood stagnated and then dissipated. Jian Wushuang, who had originally been lying down, slowly stood up. As he stood up, a frightening aura exploded out from his body. With the help of the first volume of the soul-devouring secret skill, he could merely swallow up all of the natural power within a radius of 100 meters. However, after performing the second volume, he devoured all of the natural power on the entire island without exception. His cultivation of spiritual power rose sharply in an instant. He had achieved the peak of the Yang Void Realm. Peak of Yang Void Realm. Jian Wushuang glanced at his palms and then clasped them together. A blast of cracking sounds came out as if he scratched the air. Going directly from the initial Yang Void Realm to the peak of the Yang Void Realm, he had advanced by no less than 3 levels, and this was all within the Yang Void Realm. In the Nanyang continent, there were some extremely powerful elixirs that could sharply increase one's power in a short span of time. With regards to Yang Void experts, there are limitations. They could improve 1 level at most. However, the soul-devouring secret skill had allowed Jian Wushuang to advance by 3 levels. How powerful! Of course, this potent secret technique placed also a heavy burden on the body. The natural power is too much. The longer I utilize the soul-devouring secret skill, the greater effect it has on my body. Jian Wushuang frowned and suddenly raised his head. Boom! With a terrifying aura, Jian Wushuang leapt out from the bottom of the pit, and once more appeared in front of Qi Luosheng. Immediately, his terrifying aura swept out and caused many of the experts around the perimeter to feel it. Such a strong aura. How could his cultivation of spiritual power improve to such an extent? All of that just then, that was all his doing. What on earth kind of method is this? A terrifying method. Numerous of the surrounding experts were all dumbstruck. As he watched Jian Wushuang's aura, Qi Luosheng was also astonished. Peak of the Yang Void Realm? But he still smiled just as before. Even with the cultivation of spiritual power advancement, then what? In the end it's still only the Yang Void Realm. In the face of the Saint Realm, he's a mere ant and that's all. For this next move, I'll use full power. When Qi Luosheng finished speaking, a finger of his right hand once again slowly raised up. It just so happens that I also don't want to waste time, Jian Wushuang said coldly. The triple kill sword in his hand trembled with excitement. Behind him, the towering figure of the giant had once again emerged. It was still the first move of the blood-emptying technique, but in the wake of Jian Wushuang's sharp rise in cultivation of spiritual power, the power of the stroke had advanced to a truly terrifying state. The unmatched stroke once again descended. Qi Luosheng's finger extended and the giant finger lashed out once again. In a split second, the two terrifying powers collided with each other. It was as if 2 stars were colliding head-on. Slam! There was a world-shaking tremor. The earth quaked and the mountains shook. Swoosh! The awful blast waves viciously swept out. The entire Heartless Island started to violently shake. At the core of the collision, a streak of sword light flew off without warning. It mercilessly swept across the Heartless Island. Rumble! In an instant, the Heartless Island split in two. Chapter 255, Half a Palm. Chapter 255, Half a Palm. What? Get out of this island as soon as possible. Oh, my God, the Heartless Island was split in two. Countless experts were petrified at the sight of it. Indeed, the vast Heartless Island was split in two at the moment. If it was due to Jian Wushuang's or Qi Luosheng's attack on the Heartless Island, the onlookers would not be surprised for that to be the case. However, it was just because of the aftermath of the two of them colliding with each other. The wave could affect the island thousands of meters away. What did it mean? All of them were shocked. Many experts, who were having a fierce fight, retreated from the Heartless Island and left the battlefield for Jian Wushuang and Qi Luosheng. In the void over the island, two roaring powers were still up against each other. Their explosive power spread madly, which formed a great energy storm around them within a 100-meter radius. No one dared to intrude into this storm. Even an expert of Yang Void Realm might disappear once he entered it. In the center of the battlefield, Jian Wushuang looked cold, with continuous sword essence bursting out. Qi Luosheng's face fell slightly. He did not expect that his full attack would have been blocked by Jian Wushuang. Although Jian Wushuang improved his strength greatly, he remained at the peak of Yang Void Realm. There was a huge gap between his level and divine transcendence. However, Qi Luosheng did not know that Jian Wushuang had cultivated heavenly creation skill. It made him 10 times stronger than that of cultivation of spiritual power at the peak of Yang Void Realm. More importantly, Jian Wushuang comprehended origin more deeply than Qi Luosheng. Jian Wushuang's triple kill sword was the inferior second-grade magic weapon and the sword skill he displayed was superior third-grade. As for weapon and unique skill, Qi Luosheng was much weaker than Jian Wushuang. Qi Luosheng. Jian Wushuang suddenly spoke and looked towards Qi Luosheng with cold eye. Qi Luosheng slightly raised his head. Do you know I just struck the blow with 70% of my strength, Jian Wushuang said. What? Qi Luosheng was shocked. He had already tried his best to attack him, but Jian Wushuang just used 70% of his strength. How could it be possible? It said that pay back in one's own coin. Now I will pay you back, Jian Wushuang said coldly, therefore, I'll let you know my full strength. Jian Wushuang instantly burst out his full strength. Thump! The sword shadow, who had been collided with the ancient giant finger, suddenly had immense roaring power. The two forces had been in stalemate, but now as the power of sword shadow increased greatly, the ancient giant finger immediately showed a sign of being in a huge disadvantage. Kai! 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 A hole was pierced in the center of the ancient giant finger, which was made of spiritual power. Then the giant finger lost its defense and was shattered in the blink of an eye. After the giant finger was crushed, the powerful force swept over. Qi Luosheng could not help but step back. When a figure suddenly appeared beside him, Qi Luosheng immediately felt a strong killing intent attack his body. This is bad. Qi Luosheng was scared, with a sense of crisis starting to emerge in his heart. Whoosh! A flash of sword shadow rushed towards him. After the sword shadow came out, the long sword was still shaking madly, letting out the echo of sword, as if it was extremely hungry. After all, Qi Luosheng was the super expert of divine transcendence. Despite being faced with a crisis, he was still composed. A large quantity of spiritual power gathered in his left hand, and formed armor-like black crystals. Then he used it against the splendid sword shadow. Ridiculous! Jian Wushuang mocked. With the outburst of his strength, Triple Kill Sword emitted a cold light, slashing at the layer of the black crystals on Qi Luosheng's palm. When touching the crystals, the sword light just stopped for a second, and then cut through the layer of the black crystals, as if it was cutting a piece of tofu. It even hurt Qi Luosheng's palm. Kai! 5 fingers flying out at the same time. The sword. Qi Luosheng glanced at the long sword with a flicker of terror in his eyes. Then he retreated as far as possible. After stabilizing his stance, Qi Luosheng held his severed palm tightly. Crack! His blood-red wicked mask, which had been broken during the fight, cracked at this moment. An extremely old, ugly face showed up. His face was completely distorted. A large number of warriors out of the Heartless Island were immediately exhilarated. They were shocked at Jian Wushuang's strength. Jian Wushuang cut off a palm of a super expert of divine transcendence. They were also shocked at Qi Luosheng's face. It was unexpected that an old ugly woman was the Tower Master of Bloodfeather Tower. Unexpectedly, the legendary Tower Master of Bloodfeather Tower is an old woman. Jian Wushuang held triple kill sword, with the soaring sword essence. At this moment, he had appeared beside Jian Nantian. The magic weapon? Jian Wushuang, you are just at the Yang Void Realm. How can you own such a weapon? From the power of the weapon, it might not be a usual third-grade magic weapon. Qi Luosheng slight raised her head with her distorted look. She looked at triple kill sword with a flicker of fear and fever in her eyes. The magic weapons were definitely treasures in the Nanyang continent. Expert for Jian Wushuang, no one in the Qianzong dynasty had magic weapons. She had noticed that the long sword was extraordinary, but she did not expect that the sword was a magic weapon. With the help of this weapon, Jian Wushuang had just cut off her palm. However, you are too naive if you thought you would be able to leave this island alive. Qi Luosheng suddenly laughed hideously. Huh! Jian Wushuang squinted, with an ominous presentiment. Master Xiao Nan, it's your turn. Qi Luosheng spoke in a low voice. The moment Qi Luosheng finished her words, a terrifying power suddenly swept over from a corner of the Heartless Island. The power was much stronger than that from Qi Luosheng, who attacked with her full strength. In the blink of an eye, the whole Heartless Island went still. All people present were terrified. No one expected that another divine transcendence was on the Heartless Island. The man was even stronger than Qi Luosheng. Chapter 256, A Fight with Two Experts of the Saint Realm. Chapter 256, A Fight with Two Experts of the Saint Realm. Whoosh! A white-robed elder with white hair suddenly appeared beside Qi Luosheng. His breath was even stronger than Qi Luosheng. Everyone knew his identity. Divine transcendence. There's still one more person. Jian Wushuang looked at the white-robed elder with an upset look. If the newcomer had only reached the peak of Yang Void Realm and even comprehended origin, Jian Wushuang would not have minded it. However, this elder was a super expert of divine transcendence. Even Qi Luosheng called him master, which indicated the elder's strength. He is Lin Xiaonan of Holy Emperor Palace. Wang Yuan's face fell when he saw the elder. This old monster. Dan Yi was also shocked. Qi Luosheng reached divine transcendence half a year ago, so he had just achieved the Saint Realm at the most ordinary level. Both Wang Yuan and Dan Yi knew that the white-robed elder had been at the level of Saint Realm for dozens of years. The old guy has created a saintly body. He is much stronger than Qi Luosheng. Bastard! Wang Yuan cursed in private. The number of experts of Elixir School was comparable to that of Holy Emperor Palace. Wang Yuan had joined this fight out of his own volition. He could not represent Elixir School, so he could not use the experts of Elixir School, but Holy Emperor Palace could. Bloodfeather Tower was the underling of Holy Emperor Palace. In order to kill Jian Wushuang and Jian Nantian, Holy Emperor Palace had intentionally dispatched a superior of the Saint Realm to hide himself as a backup, in case events that unfolded were not in their favor. Now, the expert of the Saint Realm showed himself. Master Xiao Nan. Qi Luosheng looked at the elder with respect. Tower Master, even though your breakthrough was recent, you're still supposed to be a super expert of the Saint Realm. Unexpectedly, you couldn't even defeat an insignificant person of the Yang Void Realm, and lost half of your hand. If this news spreads, you'll lose face. Lin Xiaonan glanced at Qi Luosheng. The thunderous look on Qi Luosheng's face immediately went stiff and became more distorted. Master Xiao Nan, less nonsense, please kill the boy as soon as possible. I know. Since I have come here, I won't let him go. Lin Xiaonan looked confident and stroked his beard. Jian Wushuang was a little scared. Then he waved his hand and released a streak of flowing light towards Jian Nantian. Jian Nantian caught the streak of flowing light and opened his hand. There was a brown elixir on his palm. Father, this is reversal red scorching elixir, which can fix your broken dantian and enhance your strength. However, the elixir will squeeze out all of your potentials. If you eat it, you will not be able to reach the further realms. Jian Wushuang explained the effect of the elixir. Oh! Jian Nantian blinked, and ate the reversal red scorching elixir without hesitation. Then he instantly sat down with his legs crossed. Give me 10 minutes, Jian Nantian said, and closed his eyes. 10 minutes. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes. 10 minutes was not long, but many fights could take place within 10 minutes. Fourth younger sister. Jian Wushuang shouted. Whoosh. Su Ru immediately appeared beside Jian Wushuang. Please protect my father. Don't let anyone disturb him, Jian Wushuang said. Okay. Su Ru nodded heavily. She was not adept at frontal attack, but as a protector, she was stronger than all other experts. Jian Wushuang was relieved that Su Ru could protect his father, provided that the two experts of the Saint Realm did not attack her. Let me deal with the two guys of the Saint Realm, Jian Wushuang said calmly. Third elder brother, are you sure that you can handle it? Su Ru looked at Jian Wushuang. I'll try. Jian Wushuang smiled, with a flicker of madness in his eyes. Boom. Emitting a terrifying wave of breath, Jian Wushuang dashed out with strong vigor. Whoosh. Jian Wushuang struck a blow with his sword. The sword light whistled. Qi Luosheng and Lin Xiaonan dodged and let the sword light slash through the space between the two of them. Thump. The half part of the island was cut in two by the streak of sword light. Whoosh. An old figure soundlessly appeared in front of Jian Wushuang. It was Lin Xiaonan. He glanced at Jian Wushuang indifferently. Shaping his hand into a claw, he struck back at a lightning speed. Jian Wushuang twisted his body. A streak of white sword light flashed through swirling snow. Lin Xiaonan sneered. Then he clenched his fist and smashed it toward the white light. Clang! Jian Wushuang's sword light collided with the fist, letting out a metal-like bumping sound. What? Jian Wushuang was astonished. I made a powerful attack. Moreover, it came from triple kill sword. It was able to cut off Qi Luosheng's hand. A layer of the black crystals could not block my stroke. However, his stroke could not slash into Lin Xiaonan's fist. It's a good sword, but it's wasted on you. You haven't displayed the real power of the sword. Lin Xiaonan sneered. Then he tried to attack Jian Wushuang with a succession of punches. Each punch was extremely powerful. Jian Wushuang waved his long sword to deflect them. While Jian Wushuang and Lin Xiaonan were fighting with each other, Qi Luosheng took the chance to appear beside Jian Wushuang. Kiddo, go to hell. Qi Luosheng's distorted face became more horrible. He gathered terrifying power in his remaining hand and launched an attack on Jian Wushuang. Ridiculous. Jian Wushuang did not look at Qi Luosheng, and brandished his sword towards Qi Luosheng. The latter was instantly forced to retreat. At this moment, a giant elephant appeared behind Lin Xiaonan. The giant elephant was as large as a mountain. Then Lin Xiaonan's body changed into a mountain, and rushed towards Jian Wushuang. Hum. Jian Wushuang snorted. His body turned into ghosts. Streaks of residual shadow appeared around the void nearby. When Lin Xiaonan eventually crashed into a streak of residual shadow, the sword light immediately dashed towards him. Jian Wushuang made this stroke with roaring battle intent and invincible momentum. He was fighting two experts of the Saint Realm, but there was no sign that he would lose the fight. Chapter 257, 10 minutes. Chapter 257, 10 minutes. Snow continued to fall. The unprecedented battle continued on the Heartless Island. There were only 3 people left, Jian Wushuang, Lin Xiaonan, and Qi Luosheng. Wang Yuan and other experts of Bloodfeather Tower had stopped stepping in and stood outside the island to watch this unprecedented battle. The entire Heartless Island was filled with jubilation when all the spectators saw Jian Wushuang fighting against the two super experts of the Saint Realm. Oh God, he's fighting against two. He's fighting with the two super experts of divine transcendence and remains neck and neck with them. How is this possible? How could Jian Wushuang be so strong? Jian Wushuang lives up to his name. He is peerless. He is 20, right? As a 20-year-old man, he could cut off the hand of an expert of the Saint Realm, and could fight against two experts of the Saint Realm. It's incredible. Monster, a real monster. Such a monster has never appeared since our Tianzong dynasty was established. Countless experts marveled at it. The younger generation of warriors were in a complete frenzy. Jian Wushuang, amazing. Ling Feng from the Tianyuan sword sect was howling, his hands grasped together. His mania and worship for Jian Wushuang had reached a new peak. Incredible. I've lived for so long and have never seen a peerless genius like him. Our Tianyuan sword sect is famous for sword principle. If our sect could have a genius at just half of Jian Wushuang's strength, I can die without any regrets, a white-haired elder with a young face, who was sect master from the Tianyuan sword sect, said. Jian Meng'er was petrified by those words. After all, Jian Wushuang had numerous ties to her. She had already been shocked by the achievement Jian Wushuang had obtained. Now she felt completely desperate. She was well aware that Jian Wushuang was now so strong that he could single-handedly exterminate her Tianyuan sword sect. Above the void not far from the Heartless Island, a grey-robed elder stood quietly and stared at the unprecedented battle. He's only 20 years old and can already fight against the super experts by himself. Even though he used some special tactics, it's miraculous. Our young master's brother is great indeed. The grey-robed elder was the sixth elder from alchemy school. Even he was greatly shocked by Jian Wushuang's strength. There were two figures standing above another void. One was Di, monarch of the Tianzong dynasty, the other was a red-robed man. The red-robed man looked younger than Di, but Di stood behind the red-robed man, showing a hint of respect for the red-robed man. After all, the red-robed man was the real pillar of the Tianzong dynasty. He was the founding emperor of the Tianzong dynasty and the creator of formless swordsmanship, which meant that he had been a super expert of divine transcendence for hundreds of years. The red-robed man was named Hong Shuzi. An amazing kid. Hong Shuzi could not help exclaiming while watching what happened in the battlefield. Your Majesty, should we really be just watching like this? She could not help but ask. What else can we do? Hong Shuzi replied with a hint of resignation, I want to save him, but once I step in, I will be in trouble with Holy Emperor Palace. Our Tianzong dynasty is just a small empire in the Nanyang continent and doesn't have a backer. How can we piss off the Holy Emperor Palace? On hearing this, Di's expression changed. Indeed, the Tianzong dynasty was not a superforce like the Alchemy School or Ice Nether Valley. If they offended Holy Emperor Palace could easily wipe them out. Alas, our Tianzong dynasty finally has such a genius. Unfortunately, he has pissed off the Holy Emperor Palace. I'm afraid it will be his last fight. Hong Shuzi shook his head. The last fight? Your Majesty, hasn't Jian Wushuang been neck and neck with them? She asked, voice filled with doubt. Yes, he has, but it won't stay that way for long. Hong Shuzi still shook his head. I know the kid has improved his strength greatly because of a special tactic. It should be a cultivation method or a special martial arts technique, which can absorb natural power to serve himself. It breaks the natural balance, so it will cause severe damage to his body. He won't be able to sustain this for long. Moreover, Lin Xiaonan hasn't yet used his full strength, Hong Shuzi said. What? She was startled and said, Lin Xiaonan has hidden his strength. Sure. Hong Shuzi nodded, it won't be so easy to fight an expert of the Saint Realm. Qi Luosheng has just reached the Saint Realm, so the kid could cut off his hand. However, Lin Xiaonan has reached the Saint Realm for dozens of years and even created the saintly body. He is much stronger than Qi Luosheng. Look, he's using his full strength. She immediately looked toward the battlefield. Jian Wushuang's swordsmanship was perfect with the help of origin of the world. He could block the joint attack from Lin Xiaonan and Qi Luosheng. He did not seem to be weaker than them. However, Lin Xiaonan's strength abruptly burst out. Lin Xiaonan appeared in front of Jian Wushuang. Then he changed himself into a peerless beast. Each part of his body, such as his hands, fingers, fingertips, elbows, shoulders, and knees, was transformed into a weapon. Boom, 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 boom. The continuous powerful attack lashed out at an amazing speed. Astonished, Jian Wushuang immediately used his swordsmanship to block the attacks. Each of his strokes crashed into Lin Xiaonan's body parts, but they could not split his body. Lin Xiaonan suddenly opened his mouth and let out a low howl. In the blink of an eye, a blast of sound waves rushed towards Jian Wushuang. The sudden onslaught of the sound waves seriously injured Jian Wushuang. Blood spurted from his mouth. Like a cannonball being fired, his body was thrown backward. He fell heavily, causing the ground on the Heartless Island to be crushed. Jian Wushuang's aura immediately faded away. Alas, he is defeated. Even if he's peerless, he ultimately lost. The countless experts could not help but sigh on witnessing this scene. Jian Wushuang, who seemed to have lost his battle strength, did not look panic-stricken. He had a meaningful smile on his face, because 10 minutes had passed. Chapter 258 A Sword to the South. Chapter 258 A Sword to the South. Is he smiling? How can he smile at this point? Is he crazy? Numerous experts outside the Heartless Island were staring at the smile on the face of Jian Wushuang, who was now lying on the ground. The next moment, a monstrous aura could be seen slowly rising up, as if it was a huge dragon that had slept for billions of years but now had just awakened. In no time the aura flew to the 9th heaven. This is. Many experts outside the Heartless Island couldn't help looking towards the root source of that aura. Lin Xiaonan and Qi Luosheng looked towards it as well. At this moment, the white-haired man slowly opened his eyes. He had been sitting with crossed legs on the drill ground of the Heartless Island. By then, there was a violent aura rising up from the white-haired man. The aura was much stronger than that of the ordinary expert at the peak of the Yang Void Realm. But compared to the experts of divine transcendence, it was a little bit weaker. It seemed a level between the Saint Realm and the Yin-Yang Void Realm. Half-step Saint Realm? Noticing the aura, Lin Xiaonan couldn't help changing his expression. Many experts outside the Heartless Island were all stunned at this moment. Jian Nantian. It's him. Is it him? Unbelievable. His Dantian was destroyed, wasn't it? The warriors were all shocked. They had already seen Jian Nantian when the meeting began. At that time, his Dantian was destroyed and he looked like an ordinary person. He looked extremely dirty. At their first glance, he was no better than a beggar on the street. However, it was just such a person who activated a terrifying aura that was more violent than the experts present. Only Lin Xiaonan and Qi Luosheng were qualified to be his match. Were they really the same person? Before everybody's eyes, Jian Nantian slowly stood up. He looked towards his hands with wandering eyes, and then tightly grasped his fists. Instantly, a horrible strength was gathered in his hands. Reversal red scorching elixir, you want to squeeze my full potential strength. What a joke. Jian Nantian chuckled to himself. The chuckles contained a tinge of a casual air and more overbearing arrogance. When Jian Wushuang gave the reversal red scorching elixir to Jian Nantian, he already told him that the elixir would greatly squeeze his potential strength to enhance his strength. However, Jian Nantian took the elixir down without any hesitation. The reason was that he was extremely confident in his potential. The truth was that the reversal red scorching elixir did recondition his Dantian, and his potential strength had been squeezed. However, only a small amount was squeezed before it stopped. Jian Nantian's potential strength was too strong, so even the reversal red scorching elixir had no way and no ability to get it completely released. After a part of his potential strength was unleashed, his cultivation of spiritual power was greatly enhanced and it reached the half-step Saint Realm level. The half-step Saint Realm is powerful enough to end everything in front of me. Jian Nantian smiled lightly. He then came up to Jian Wushuang. By now, Su Ru already helped Jian Wushuang up. Jian Nantian and Jian Wushuang looked at each other. Both of them showed a smile on their faces, without an exchange of words. Shuang'er, borrow me your triple kill sword, said Jian Nantian. With a wave, Jian Wushuang just threw his triple kill sword to Jian Nantian. As soon as Jian Nantian took the triple kill sword, his aura was instantly changed. Jian Nantian was originally amiable and ethereal, as if he was standing on the cloud. However, at this moment, there was an extremely horrible killing intent bursting out from his body. He could definitely be called the matchless killing god. His face turned cold and solemn. Then he slowly turned around and looked towards Lin Xiaonan. You've not only reached divine transcendence, but also had a saintly body. While Jian Nantian was muttering, he fiercely bounded up. Whoosh! Jian Nantian appeared less than 1 meter away in front of Lin Xiaonan. He then casually slashed his triple kill sword out. It indeed looked like a random slash. The triple kill sword waved out at a seemingly slow speed. In the eyes of the experts present, it could be called a slow slash. The slash was too slow, as if it didn't contain any strength. Many experts present were confused, because this slash was too ordinary. Even an expert of the yin-yang void realm could easily ward off his stroke, not to mention his opponent who was an expert of the saint realm. Lin Xiaonan frowned as well. He was about to display the movements, but he was stopped by a horrible killing intent engulfing his body all of a sudden. Rumble. Lin Xiaonan felt as if there were 10 million flashes of lightning and thunder roaring over his head, which made him stunned as once. Lin Xiaonan stood motionless in the void, with his eyes appearing empty. At the same time, his whole body became muddlehead. The sword shadow was gliding towards Lin Xiaonan slowly. However, he was standing still like a fool, and letting the sword shadow strike at him. Lin Xiaonan's body was extremely hard, even Jian Wushuang couldn't prick his skin with his strongest strike. However now, facing the slow sword shadow, his body was soft like bean curd. Shua. The sword shadow relentlessly cut through Lin Xiaonan's body. Then Jian Nantian stopped his sword, and stood still again. Lin Xiaonan didn't regain consciousness until he felt a prick on his body. At the same time, he could obviously feel that his aura was reducing. Lin Xiaonan widened his eyes, which were full of unprecedented panic at that moment. When his aura was about to die, he shouted to Qi Luosheng who was next to him. Space travel spell. Use the space travel spell right away. He was shouting, and his voice gradually became weak. Finally, he crumpled to the ground, under the eyes of numerous experts in shock. Lin Xiaonan had entered the saint realm for dozens of years, and he even had created the saintly body. But he was just killed with a single strike. Crazy. All the onlookers went crazy at this moment. Impossible. Killed a divine transcendence expert with a stroke? How can it be possible? Fake. This must be fake. How can the expert at the saint realm be killed so easily? Is he really the super expert of divine transcendence? Why he was killed by Jian Nantian like a chicken? Everybody widened his eyes. They couldn't believe what they just saw. Nobody had ever seen Jian Nantian display his movements before, except Jian Wushuang, Wang Yuan, Su Ru, and Dan Ju. It happened when they were at the Nine Emperors sect. At that time, Jian Nantian's Dantian was destroyed. However, he still killed a yin void expert with a slash, with an unbelievable strength. Now, Jian Nantian's cultivation of spiritual power had been enhanced to the level of half-saint. Therefore, it was not hard for Jian Nantian to kill the expert of the saint realm with a stroke. Chapter 259, The Blood Feather Tower, Vanish. Chapter 259, The Blood Feather Tower, Vanish. The experts on or outside Heartless Island were shocked speechless. The warriors who looked down on Jian Nantian and thought he was just so-so, and the ones who thought Jian Nantian was no different from the beggars on the street, were now stunned with their mouths opened. An expert of the saint realm was killed by Jian Nantian with an ordinary stroke. It was indeed an ordinary slash. Normally, an expert at the yin-yang void realm could ward off easily. However, when facing the slash, Lin Xiaonan acted like a fool. He didn't move, nor blocked it. He just stood still, letting Jian Nantian kill him. This was most mysterious and left everybody in a state of confusion. Hong Shuzi was levitating on the void nearby. Seeing this, he couldn't help shouting, "Domain! Domain! Domain!" Di Shi, who was behind of Hong Shuzi, rushed to look towards Jian Nantian. It is indeed the realm. Jian Nantian should have reached great heights in the ability of controlling the domain. That's why he could cause an expert of the Saint Realm to lose his consciousness. I am afraid this ability is even stronger than mine. There was a hint of shock flashing in Hong Shuzi's eyes. It was known that Hong Shuzi had broken through the Saint Realm for hundreds of years, so his strength was naturally even more terrifying. He didn't think highly of Lin Xiaonan. But he couldn't kill him with a stroke like how Jian Nantian did. In other words, Jian Nantian's strength might be stronger than his. What an exceptional genius! Both Jian Nantian and his son Jian Wushuang are exceptional geniuses. One is 20 years old, but he was powerful enough to fight the expert of the Saint Realm. The other one gained half-saint cultivation, and killed Lin Xiaonan, who created the saintly body. Tut-tut, Hong Shuzi couldn't help sighing. The experts on and outside the Heartless Island sighed one after another as well. At the same time, most of them threw their compassionate eyes upon Qi Luosheng. Even Lin Xiaonan, who created a saintly body, was killed by Jian Nantian with a stroke. Would Qi Luosheng have a better end? By now, Qi Luosheng was already stunned by what just happened. Jian Nantian's indifferent eyes upon her had already scared the living daylights out of her. At this moment, what Lin Xiaonan said before he died suddenly flashed into her head. Space travel spell, right, I have the space travel spell. Qi Luosheng's eyes were glistening with a slight of hope. She then rushed to take an object out from the interspatial ring with her shaking right hand. That was a travel spell with a light golden color, and with a layer of vast energy covering the surface. Qi Luosheng took out the travel spell and was about to crush it. But she was stopped by the appearance of a sword light. The sword light came to her without premonitions and it just moved over her arm. Ah! A screech came from Qi Luosheng's mouth. A second later, she found her whole right arm was cut off. The travel spell had fallen away together with the severed arm. At this moment, this fell onto a hand, which easily collected the travel spell. Needless to say, the hand was Jian Nantian's. This should be the space travel spell that Lin Xiaonan just mentioned. Jian Nantian looked at the travel spell coldly. I have heard of it before. It is said that this travel spell contains a wormhole. The wormhole will awaken once it is activated, then the experts in the Holy Emperor Palace will immediately come here through the wormhole. Good thinking, but would she have a chance to do it? Seeing the space travel spell was now in Jian Nantian's hand, and her right arm was amputated, Qi Luosheng's face was icy. A second later, Jian Nantian displayed another movement. It was another slow sword slash which seemed to have no strength. It looked extremely ordinary as well. This time, everybody closely watched the sword, hoping to figure out the mystery of the sword. Qi Luosheng fixed her eyes on the sword light that was gliding close to her as well. She struggled to ward it off. However, a horrible killing intent covered her, making her eyes become dull at once. Like Lin Xiaonan a while ago, Qi Luosheng was like a fool and let Jian Nantian's sword light cut through her body. Thus, the Tower Master of Bloodfeather Tower, who was well known in the Tianzong dynasty, and a terrifying existence in the whole Tianzong dynasty, died. Just with a single sword slash. Efficient and quick. Seeing this, a great number of experts around couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. They still couldn't figure out how Jian Nantian killed these two experts of the Saint Realm. But they knew clearly that the slash Jian Nantian displayed seemed ordinary, but it actually contained horrifying strength. After killing the two experts of the Saint Realm, Jian Nantian turned around and walked to Jian Wushuang. Here you are. Jian Nantian gave the triple kill sword to Jian Wushuang. Father, the triple kill sword. Jian Wushuang frowned. The triple kill sword was originally owned by Jian Nantian before. Later on, he knew he was chased by the Bloodfeather Tower and he barely had the chance to get away, so he found a way to send the triple kill sword to the mansion of Sword Marquis. That's why afterwards the sword was owned by Jian Wushuang. You are more its master than I am. Jian Nantian smiled slightly. He then found a seat, sat down, took out his flagon and began to drink on his own. Jian Wushuang smiled slightly, without saying too much. He moved his eyes upon the experts remaining in the Blood Feather Tower. The Blood Feather Tower still had some experts left, such as the left and right messengers. At this moment, both the left and right messengers and the purple-masked killers were trembling in the hearts. After all, their tower master, who was their backbone, was killed with a slash. The people in the Blood Feather Tower are an eyesore, just kill them all, Jian Wushuang said coldly. No problem, we will handle it. Wang Yuan grinned. Dan Yi and other comrades next to him also smiled. The master of the Blood Feather Tower was killed, which meant their backbone was lost, so the Blood Feather Tower was not a concern to him at all at this moment. The remaining experts were like loose sand, which was easy for them to handle. The experts present knew that the Blood Feather Tower was defeated and in a terrible state. Even the tower master of the Blood Feather Tower was killed. In other words, the Blood Feather Tower was finished. There was a saying that everybody would hit a man who was down. The Blood Feather Tower hadn't built a good reputation in the Qianzong dynasty. They had lots of enemies, and most of them were at the meeting as well. Seeing that the Blood Feather Tower was about to collapse, the enemies joined in Jian Wushuang's side without hesitation. The whole Heartless Island was immediately in chaos again. The experts in the Alchemy School, Ice Nether Valley, and Dragon Palace led the revenge. Then a large number of experts or sects who had hatred for the Blood Feather Tower took action one after another. They surrounded and attacked the Blood Feather Tower. Although the Blood Feather Tower still had some experts, facing such a formation, they couldn't withstand this. Soon after, lots of experts, including left and right messengers, were killed one by one. When the whole battlefield calmed down, Jian Wushuang looked at the bloody field, with a hint of sparkle in his eyes. From today onwards, there will no longer be Blood Feather Tower in this world. Chapter 260, The Exceptional Father and Son. Chapter 260, The Exceptional Father and Son. Over. After killing all the experts in Blood Feather Tower, the war finally came to end. After the end of the war, many experts at the court found that Heartless Island, which originally stood at the center of the lake, had disappeared. It was gone indeed. The main island had sunk into the bottom of the lake except for some fragmented and patchy lands. Outside Heartless Island, a group of experts who attended this gathering had witnessed the war. They were hot-blooded and excited and couldn't calm down for a long time. Everyone here was talking about the brutal war just now. It was not until dusk that the experts of the clans and other forces left gradually. The next day, the Millennium Chronicle from Gladiator Arena described the war. This war was named by the Millennium Chronicle as a war enough to surpass the ancients and amaze the present. The Millennium Chronicle depicted in detail all the scenes of the war at Heartless Island, including splitting the mountain to make a path and cutting off the lake at the beginning. It also described how Jian Wushuang killed 3 warriors at the peak of the Young Void Realm from Wilderness Sword Sect, and fought alone against 2 experts of the Saint. The description was very detailed, in which all aspects were described and explained. In addition, the Millennium Chronicle also mentioned that Jian Wushuang was only 20 years old. 20 years old, fighting alone against 2 experts of the Saint Realm? Amazing. Unbelievable, he was only 20 years old, how could he be so strong? Countless warriors of the Qianzong dynasty felt shocked when they saw the description of this page of the Millennium Chronicle. In their heart, experts of divine transcendence were almost like deities, but a 20-year-old little boy fought against 2 experts of the Saint Realm and even cut off half of a palm of one of them. Everyone was naturally amazed by the terrifying talent. At the end of the Millennium Chronicle, Jian Nantian was mentioned again. First, it simply described some experiences of Jian Nantian before he was at Blood Feather Tower, and then mentioned his 2 gorgeous and dazzling strokes on the Heartless Island. The 2 experts of the Saint Realm were killed by the 2 strokes. Seeing this, those warriors of Qianzong dynasty were all excited. More importantly, the Millennium Chronicle said that Jian Nantian himself was not in the Saint Realm. A man who did not reach divine transcendence had killed 2 divine transcendence experts with only 2 strikes. Everyone felt overwhelmed and thought that it was incredible. There was a sentence that evaluated these father and son at the end of the Millennium Chronicle. Both father and son are exceptional geniuses who are as splendid as the heaven and earth. Countless people admired this sentence and all agreed with what it said. It was really outstanding that both father and son were such geniuses in defiance of the natural order. After the Millennium Chronicle updated, the Earthly Dragon List and Heavenly Dragon List from the Golden Dragon Palace had great changes. Jian Wushuang always ranked number 1 on the Earthly Dragon List, but now his name disappeared from the list. The Heavenly Dragon List recorded 18 experts at the peak of the Yang Void Realm from the Tianzong dynasty, and the left and right messengers of Bloodfeather Tower were also on the list. After the war, Jian Wushuang and his father rose while the left and right messengers died, so the list naturally changed. The Heavenly Dragon List updated its rankings. The top 1 on the Heavenly Dragon List, Zhen Nantian. The top 2, Jian Wushuang. The top 3, Di Shi. No one in the Tianzong dynasty dared to question about the rankings. Even Di Shi, who originally ranked number 1 on the list, had no disagreement about that, because everyone knew that Zhen Nantian and Jian Wushuang were qualified for their rankings. Their battle results were recognized by the public and their strength were not in doubt. While the whole Tianzong dynasty was shocked by the earth-shattering war, something happened in the Sword Marquis Mansion. After a few years, Jian Wushuang came back to the Sword Marquis Mansion again. In the courtyard where Jian Wushuang lived, several purple-robed figures stood there without any emotions and sent forth powerful breaths. Outside the courtyard, many disciples of Sword Marquis Mansion excitedly gathered there and stared at these purple-robed people. They are the super experts of the Yin-Yang Void Realm? Yes, all of them are at Yin-Yang Void Realm. Any one of them is much stronger than our mansion master, but now, they are our brother Wushuang's guards. Brother Wushuang is so great. When Jian Wushuang came back the Sword Marquis Mansion, the news about the war at Heartless Island was known by the disciples of Sword Marquis Mansion. The whole mansion of Sword Marquis was astonished about that, and all disciples worshipped Jian Wushuang. The purple-robed people at Yin-Yang Void Realm in front of them were legends for the disciples of Sword Marquis Mansion, but now they stood reverently out of the room and apparently only acted as guards. A warrior at Yin-Yang Void Realm worked as a guard, which was unbelievable to the disciples of Sword Marquis Mansion. In the room, Jian Wushuang sat on a seat and his face was pale while his father and Wang Yuan sat beside him. Third younger brother, what's wrong with your injury? I gave several excellent pills to cure your injury, but 3 days passed, you still have not recovered, Wang Yuan frowned and said. After hearing that, Jian Wushuang smiled. My injury was caused by some special means. Even though I have your elixirs, it will still take me 12 days to recover. Jian Wushuang clearly knew that it cost him a lot to perform Volume 2 of Soul-Devouring Secret Skill, let alone lasting for a long time. Even when he was heavily hurt by Lin Xiaonan, it was lucky for him to save his life. Jian Nantian moved his gaze and glanced at Jian Wushuang. In the Heartless Island, he saw Jian Wushuang performing Soul-Devouring Secret Skill and secretly guessed some taboos because of that, but he didn't say any more. Where is the 4th sister? Jian Wushuang suddenly asked. She's gone, Wang Yuan said. After sending you back the Sword Marquis Mansion, she took her people away. Maybe she hurried to Ice Nether Valley. Oh, so urgent. Jian Wushuang couldn't help but be surprised. The 4th sister was not urgent, but the master behind her might already be impatient, Wang Yuan said a little coldly. Master? Jian Wushuang frowned. Wang Yuan, you have never mentioned the master behind the 4th sister. It seems that you're not happy with him. What's the matter? I'm not satisfied with him, because I always think that guy is very hypocritical. I'm afraid that it's not a good thing that the 4th sister stays with him, Wang Yuan said. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang could not help squinting. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.